Hey there, folks. This is SeaBass from Simply Computing, and welcome to our Backing Up with Time Machine seminar. Just so you guys are aware, there's World Backup Day is March 31st. So this is in preparation for that, to remind everybody to make sure you're doing backups with your Macs so that your files are all safe and sound. And if you need to kind of restore them, we can get those back as well. All right, so let's get started here with a little bit of a presentation here, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to cover in this seminar. All right, so we're going to be covering what is a time machine backup, and also covering how to set up backups for our Mac systems as well, and how we can use time machine backup to get our files back and retrieved again. So we're also going to be covering why it's important. And the biggest thing is one of the things that I get a lot in our one-on-ones here through this whole year in COVID and whatnot. We've had some folks that have had certain issues, like they might have had an accident with their computer, maybe spilled some water on it, and had some pretty serious damage. And it's really important. Those that have had backups have had better success getting their data back onto a new system, or just trying to find some of those files to get back on their systems as well. So we're really trying to encourage everybody to really starting to consistently get into backups, primarily automatically if we can. The more often we back up, the more accurate, or the more often we have our files that we're working on our systems that we can recover from. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So what is a time machine backup? So time machine is a application on every Mac that lives in system preferences, and it's designed to back up your entire system. Unlike some other backup techniques, like just storing things to cloud or Dropbox or Google, time machine basically grabs everything off the Mac, everything from your bookmarks, files that are stored locally, stickies and things of that nature. Whereas those types of things aren't usually stored when people just kind of copy things back and forth to the cloud or a Dropbox or a Google account. So time machine is this application that we want to use to make sure that your system is completely backed up. Now, what do we need to kind of make this happen? We need some external hard drives to connect to our Macs in order to do so. We got lots of hard drives here at the shop here, and different appropriate hard drives for this very task, whether it's a laptop or your iMac. Now, time machine is kind of unique as far as most backup applications because it does something called incremental backups. First, it backs up everything on your computer, and that first backup takes a little bit of time to do the first time you do it. But every backup after that, while that drive is connected and doing its job, it's backing up only what has changed after your initial backup. So that way you're not completely filling up your drives all the time as well. And it basically makes it easy to recover files, emails, and media from those drives and the backups at any time. And it's a very simple process. All right. Obviously, why this is important. Time machine backups allows you to restore to your Mac. Allows you to restore from the Mac, or you can do like data migrations to a new Mac if you're doing it as well. And it also, if you accidentally delete a file or an email or like that as well, we can use time machine to then peruse our backups and then find the file that we're looking for. Basically, setting up for time machine for the first time, we're going to want an external hard drive, whether that's something like a G-Tech Armor, or if you have a very large Mac that's got a lot of data on it, like let's say an iMac with a 3 terabyte drive. We have external hard drives or desktop class hard drives that are usually larger in capacity as well. And those are suitable for machines that have very large hard drives and customers that have a lot of data. So that's an important factor to think of when you are picking a drive for Time Machine backups. All right, setting up Time Machine backups is generally a 1 or 2 click process and is, again, in your system folders. It's important to note this. You need to have a properly formatted drive. When you go into a shop and you buy a hard drive, more often than not, they are usually formatted typically for PCs, or they might be in a format called exFAT that works both for Mac and PC. We need to prepare a hard drive typically and reformat it so that it's in the right format for Time Machine. We can do that with disk utility as well, and we'll kind of cover that once we get to our demo. And so what happens with that, your first backup? So Time Machine will do an initial full backup, and depending on how much room you have on the drive or how much data you have on your system, this could take a little while to complete its first backup. And again, once this is done, when the external drive is connected, it will automatically back up everything on your Mac or what's changed while it is connected. Once multiple backups have been made, you'll have the ability to kind of go back in time to a date where you might have had that original file that you can then recover from. And that will be a feature called Enter Time Machine, which we'll cover in a moment. And with that, I think we're going to move on to how, with more of a demonstration now of like how that's going to work. So it's going to be 2 moments here, and I'm going to switch over to our other desktop here to show us how this is going to work. Let's go to Zoom. All right, so just a little confirmation with everybody here. Can everyone see my desktop now on my screen? Fantastic. All right, so what I'm going to start off with here is let's find where Time Machine lives and resides on our Mac. First place, we are going to want to go to System Preferences, and that can either be located in your dock in the bottom, which kind of looks like this one here, or you can find System Preferences also up by clicking the apple and selecting System Preferences. When System Preferences is open, you will see the little Time Machine backup icon down here. This is where we're going to make and set up our Time Machine backup. We click it like so, and what we are presented with is the 2 things here. One, an area where we can select the disk we want to use for Time Machine, and also whether we're going to have Time Machine backup every hour, automatically on the hour, and while things have changed. So a couple of things I would also like to point out in this Time Machine window is there's a little check mark that says Show Time Machine in the menu bar. If I turn that off, you will notice up in the upper left of the dock, there is no Time Machine icon. When I turn or click this button on, it will then present this little clock up here in the corner, and that is our Time Machine icon. This will basically give us a notification telling us when the last backup was. And in my case here, it was, well, done just a little bit of that 10:48 a.m. Just before this seminar started. We also have 2 other things here, Backup Now and Enter Time Machine. I'll come back to those in a moment, but I just want you to be aware that this little icon here, or sorry, this little check mark should be checked so that Time Machine icon shows up in the menu bar. The reason why that's important, because if you haven't backed up in a little while, or if there are issues with Time Machine trying to back up, it will be viewable here, and a little banner will sometimes come out saying like, hey, for you laptop users, if you haven't connected yours in a while, it might start to pop up and go, hey, you haven't backed up in 54 days or whatnot. It's probably a good idea to kind of get a backup done again. All right, so with this in mind, I'm going to choose, I have a hard drive already inside my Mac called Backup. That is this one right here. And you can see in Time Machine that this is the same drive that I've got here. So if I ever wanted to choose another disk or use a different drive, I can choose select disk. And this will tell me, at least in my system, all of the different drives that are available for me to do a backup to. In my case, I've already named a hard drive called Backup, and this is, my machine is currently being backed up to that drive. Now, one thing about the drive that your Time Machine data is being stored to, I highly recommend that you basically just use it for Time Machine backups. I've had a lot of folks that have come in where they've jammed this drive full of pictures or downloads or some other little kind of backups, and that can sometimes start to mess up a Time Machine drive, because that is something I see a fair bit of when people come in saying, hey, my hard drive's not working or my Time Machine backup's not working anymore. It's more often than not, it's because they've gone on there and they've kind of tinkered with some things that they maybe shouldn't have done. So this is all to say, if you do have a hard drive that you were using for Time Machine backups, try to leave it be and let it do its own thing without messing with it. If you want to move data to another drive so you can kind of transport it back and forth to work or something like that, I usually recommend using a separate drive for those types of purposes. All right, so and again, just to kind of give you an idea, this drive is going to have, let's just do this. I've already completed my first backup to this backup hard drive here. So I want to start showing you how we can use Time Machine to collect our files and what it's actually backing up. So we're going to use Time Machine up here. We're going to click it, and we are going to select Enter Time Machine. Now on the screen here, once I select this, Time Machines goes into a mode where, in this case, Finder presents on the screen. And what this is going to allow me to do, I just want to show you some of the anatomy on this. This can be resized so that we can see a little bit more of Finder. And we've got two things here. We have a little grouping of arrows that will allow us to go back in time. We also have a timeline just to the right here as well, showing me all the different dates and backups that are available on my drive. Because back in September 2020, I did my first backup of this machine. And then every time I've had this machine on, it has performed an automatic backup to try to keep things up to date. Now, how do we use this? Well, we're going to start off with the main panel here. And you'll notice here that this is just like Finder. It actually is Finder. And what it allows me to do is to browse just like we normally would. And what this can do is I can use these buttons here and go back in time. So right now I am looking at my desktop here in Finder, and I'm going back in time to find these different photos. So specifically, let's call up one more here. I'm just going to back out of Time Machine for a quick moment. And you will notice on my desktop here, I've got a pics to get printed. So if I go to desktop picks to get printed, I know that, let's say these are all the pictures that I have in my time machine backup or on my computer now. And let's say I accidentally delete this picture. And I go, oh my gosh, I've moved it to trash. I've emptied the trash, meaning that this file no longer lives on my system. And I go, oh my gosh, that was an important file that I needed to add to a presentation. I need somehow to get that back. We do so by jumping into Time Machine, enter Time Machine. And what will happen is you'll see that the Finder window that I had open is selected in Time Machine. And I can go back in time. I'm just going to go back 1 hour by using the arrows here. And you'll see that this picture right here has showed up. If I go to the front, you'll see that it is not there anymore on my current system. But if I go back in time, I can then find this, select the file that I want to restore from, and I will select the little button down here to restore it. And you'll see that the file then pops up and is put back to where I last had it. Now, one of the other things you can do as well is, let's say I have, I know that this file here was called, here we go, this is a better example. You want me to go down what? Now I've titled this one. And once I'm in here, if you've got something titled like this, while you are in Time Machine, I'm just going to delete this first. Off we go, move to trash. And we're going to enter Time Machine again. There we go, enter Time Machine. There we go. Now, this also still in Finder here, this also still gives me the ability to search. So for example, I'm going to type this, you want me to go down what? So basically, if you're searching at all for this, I think I called it that, there we go. Oh, that's why. I didn't have a space in between there, so the search feature wasn't quite working the way I wanted to. So let's go back to these previous ones. And if I happen to be looking somewhere else, I can type in you want and give it a couple of moments, and it should be able to find the folder, or sorry, find the files you're looking for. Or additionally, it will also allow us to search for something like IMG from this Mac and picks to get printed. I wanted to select this one here, and we can kind of look at our results here and see if we got the picture that we're looking for. Let's just try that one more time. There we go. That's the folder that I want, or sorry, that's the picture that I want. Select restore, and you'll see that my photo has now been restored here as well. One more thing, this also works very similar to in emails as well. Now, my email is not configured on this machine quite the same way as at home, but this will kind of give you the same idea. If you're somebody who is taking emails, using Apple Mail, one of the things that you can do while Apple Mail is open, I've got it clicked. If I enter Time Machine with Apple Mail open, this will allow me to kind of go back in and search some of these as well. Now, again, this is going to work a little differently on this system because I don't usually use email on this, but excuse me, for you Apple Mail users out there, you can use this very same technique to try and recover or find some old lost emails potentially, if you have had them stored on your Time Machine backup. Now, there is one more handy feature for Time Machine users. And if you're using something like Keynote or any of Apple's productivity programs like Pages, Keynote, and Numbers, if you open them up, just like so, I think everyone should still see Keynote now working. Is that correct? Got that on screen there, Dustin? Yeah, awesome. So there is a feature in these Apple apps called versions, or there we go. Let me just get out of play mode here. There we go. Called versioning. So you all see I've got my Time Machine Keynote open here. And if we go to File and select Revert to, we're able to kind of browse all the different versions of this file that I've been working on through the course of, as it's been backed up over the months and weeks. So for example, if I open up Browse All Versions, Keynote is going to allow me to go back in time. Actually, let's choose a different one. Let's call something I've worked on a few times here. Give me 2 moments. Let's go Keynote. And I know that I've worked on, yeah, we've definitely done lots of work on this one before. So this is a previous keynote that we had worked on, or a seminar that we had done before. And I know that we've made lots of revisions to this. So I know this has got a long history in my backups. So if I were to open File and select Revert and browse all versions, there we go. Let's see here. This is from September 2020. 1 second there. Let's choose something different. Recent. Yep. Let's try that one. And we're going to go back to Revert. This is now presenting us with a few things. One, it's going to show me I had a previous version of this stored in my backup yesterday at 4 o'clock. If I choose this one, it will restore this document and go back to a previous version. I chose it like so. And if I choose Browse All Versions, you'll see here that I've got a few more backups of these in my timeline. So that means that I can go back in time using these arrows here and change something. So if I had an old picture in this one, let's say I wanted to grab this, I could just select this slide or this one and then select Restore to put that into my folder again. And you'll see here that it's given me that new slide. This behavior is across all of Apple's productivity one. I find this one really, really handy. A lot of times I'll work on Keynote or I'm working in Pages, and I will kind of play around with different versions or different phrasings of words and whatnot. And if I had some content that was that I wanted to pull from an old version, I can use this version tool or this revert tool and browse those versions to pull just an individual slide or a paragraph or something from a previous document. So very handy in that regard. Okay, and one of the things, so that kind of covers a little bit of the how to get files back from your backups. But where the real thing, the real benefit of using a time machine backup is when you want to use it to bring in data from, let's say if you were doing a time machine backup, you do have an accident or something like that, your time machine backup can be used to restore your entire machine to a new Mac or another Mac in that regard. It will also work with a program called Migration Assistant. Migration Assistant is a tool on Apple in the utilities folder. Called Migration Assistant. When we run it, it's going to basically ask us, hey, where do you want to bring this data from? Or sorry, what data do you want to bring in from another user account? Oh, there we go. Sorry, let me just try that again. There we go. We back on there. Apologies for that, folks. I forgot when using this, it actually wants to try and boot me out of the computer to do a migration assistant. So this is all to say, I can't demonstrate it. I thought I might give that a whirl, but the idea is that with this tool, Migration Assistant, you can use or bring in an entire user account from your backup. So for example, let's say you're a family of 4, mom, dad, Johnny and Sally all use the same Mac and they all have their own accounts. If they have those accounts, Migration Assistant would be able to look at the backup and you could choose which users to migrate from your backup into your new computer. So it's also a very handy feature to work with as well. I'm just going to get out of Migration Assistant here now as well. Okay. That's about pretty much everything I've got for Time Machine at this point here. So I'm going to open this up for some questions here. And maybe we can get Destin to read a few of them off.
There's lots of questions there, SeaBass, coming through.
One is from Heather.
Heather, okay.
Yeah, she wants to know, when you restore your computer,
yeah,
do you get to does it restore from the most current Time Machine backup?
You actually have the option. That's a great question because, so for example, if you have once you go into Time Machine, or if you go and you have your existing Time Machine backup, you connect it to a new computer, one of the options is once you choose the drive and where the backup resides, you'll then be presented with a list. And that list will basically be the different dates that you can use, the different dates that you can recover from. So for example, if I had a liquid damaged or I poured wine on my old computer, but I have a backup, I can connect that drive to a new computer, start the process, and it will usually give me a listing of the backup dates that I want to use. So yes, you can choose different ones that way.
Perfect. There's just a couple of follow-up questions from Heather. The next one is, when you click restore from an older backup, is that item being restored to your newest Time Machine backup or to the folder on your computer?
Depends on the file. So just to clarify,
let's just call it a document or a photo.
Sure. So like a document or photo, it will put it, if you are in Finder in Time Machine and you are in the same location that the file was originally put, it will put it back to that same folder. If you are, let's say, looking at the desktop, it will drop them usually to, let's say it's like an email or another photo, and recover it. It's either going to be put on your desktop so you can put it somewhere else, or it's going to put it back into the original location. one of those two options. Okay, let's see here. I've got a couple more questions here.
I got just one more from Heather.
Mhm.
And there's a couple more. I backed up older documents to an external drive and removed them from my computer to save room on my computer. Will those backups work for years and year, or should you back up those old external backups? I asked this as my brother had documents, movies, and music on an old external drive, and it wouldn't work anymore. I would personally say to that, that backups do have a lifespan. I would usually recommend to my customers here in the store that external hard drive has a lifespan of about 5 years.
That's about right. Yeah.
And that after that point, it would be wise to replace that drive with a newer drive.
Absolutely. One of the big things, like these drives they're meant to be duplicates of your system. So, but over time, you know, there are motors, there's motors, there's electronics, there's mechanical parts in there. And over time, sometimes those will just start to wear down. I myself, I generally change my drives at least once, you know, every 4 to 5 years, specifically if they're starting to get really old or if I got really old backups.
I got another great question from Ron. He says that my new Seagate Backup Plus hard drive is noted to be compatible with Mac OS 10.10 or higher. Does this mean that my Mac is already formatted to use with my Time Machine and my iMac?
If it is labeled that way, it's really important to kind of check that. The big thing is that drive may have been on a shelf for a year or two, and that kind of changes over time. The format that we want for Time Machine backups is HFS. So if you're using Catalina and earlier, that drive needs to be formatted in, let me just call it up here. It needs to be formatted in HFS. And if we use disk utility to do so, and here's what's really important. If the Mac OS knows how to deal with HFS and APFS, those are its native drive formats. And the reason is, if they are formatted in those formats, you would be able to use disk utility to kind of help correct some of those things. If you used a drive right off the shelf and it was formatted for Windows, like MS-DOS, Windows NT, or whatever that format is, the Mac OS can't perform drive utilities to kind of clean up and keep the drive healthy. So it's very important, at least in my regards, I like to make sure that they are formatted when I use them for Time Machine.
Next question you've asked, just a couple of people have just asked, maybe can you just touch on what happens when your backup becomes full?
So we've been starting to see that a fair bit at the shop here as well. There are one of two things usually needs to happen. I personally haven't tried this yet, but apparently you can move the Time Machine folder to a new drive if you don't have enough room. Ideally, Time Machine is supposed to kind of prune itself. If it does fill up that drive, it does try to delete the oldest backup to make room for the newest one. But sometimes there's just too much data to be stored and too many things to be deleted. And in that event, that's usually where I recommend coming in and picking up a new, bigger drive if that's the case. Yeah, that would be how I'd work with that.
Yeah. There's another question about people that have multiple devices in their house, let's say a laptop and a desktop computer.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice for backing up when you have a multiple computer household?
So my household is kind of like that as well. As I was saying earlier, you have a couple of different storage techniques to use. You can either use individual hard drives for each computer, or the But the trick is you're gonna have to make sure that you connect these drives constantly to your computer. The way that we do it at my house is we have what's called a networked attached hard drive. We have 5 different systems, computers in our house, and we've got something like something used to be called like a time capsule. And that basically was a hard drive that would connect to our network. And it was a very large, like 3 terabytes, I think. And all of the different machines in our house connect to our network and can store the data there. The other technique you can use is to have one very big hard drive and make sure that at least no less than once a week, people connect their computers to it. But for a multi-computer setup like that, I'd probably recommend something like a network attached drive or a NAS for that kind of setup. Stay tuned. We might be having some interesting products for that in the near future as well. Let's see here. Do SSD hard last longer? I see that there's a question there. Do SSD hard drives last longer than 5 years? They can in some cases. It's really about how often you use them. I've got a couple of drives that I'm still using that have, for the last 7 years. And there are others where I've had drives that have gone down, in a year or year and a half. Just depends on how often I'm using them in that regard. But SSDs really not meant for backups. It's a fast backup, like really fast. It's a difference between I might be able to do my first backup, in half an hour instead of like 3-4 hours. But SSDs were meant to be performance drives. So a 1 terabyte SSD over a 1 terabyte G-Tech Armor, is going to be a difference of about $500-600. So they're great for that, but I would probably recommend a traditional spinning hard drive to do those types of things. Photos separately on a hard drive. I see a question from Ramsey, K. Ramsey. Do you recommend backing up photos to a separate hard drive in addition to using Time Machine? Actually, this is a very good question. Yes. More and more people are having a lot of photos these days. I myself have been using photos in my camera and whatnot, and I've kind of collected almost around 350,000 photos. Now I have a tower that can allow for larger hard drives, but for laptop users, you're exactly right. You can move your iPhoto library to an external drive and park that there. But I want you to be mindful of this. Time Machine only backs up what is in your computer. So that means if you decided to move your iPhoto library to an external drive, the Mac by default or Time Machine is going to not back up those photos moved to that external drive. If you want that to happen, Time Machine, actually, this is a great question because that's something I didn't cover in, Time Machine here, but there's an excellent little section. Let me just get this back onto a share for a moment. There we go. All right, so in Time Machine, what we're looking at is this. When we open up Time Machine preferences, we're basically going to have a little section here in the bottom right called Options. And what Options does, this is kind of like telling Time Machine what it's going to back up and what it's not going to back up. So for example, if we select Options, you will see here that in my list, it is anything in this list will be excluded from the Time Machine backup. Now, you'll see here that in the top of the list there, you don't want to back up itself, right? So that makes sense. So if my Time Machine disk is in the list, that's normal because we don't want to back it up. The other side is I've also included, because I have at least 3 drives in this system, I have a very large recording drive. I have decided to put it in the exclusion list as well, because I've got that backed up a little differently. And it's primarily because this drive is going to be about 4 terabytes, and I don't want to include all of that in my Time Machine backup. So, but if you did want to include your external hard drive as well, you can put it in here. So for example, if I were to take a USB key, for example, put that into my USB port in there, and that drive shows up, it will not be included by default on that. So for example, I'm just about to connect a hard drive to it right now. And in a moment's time, we should see that drive show up. See, look what happens there. So by default, because this hard drive is not in the computer, it is not including that in the backup. Now, if I wanted it to be included in a Time Machine backup, I would click it and remove it from the list. And that means that the next Time Machine backup would also include these pics from Asia in this folder as well. So if there's drives you don't want to include, or even folders for that matter, I can grab a folder here and say, hey, don't include this file in the backup. Maybe you got some sensitive information that's not supposed to be in a backup. This is how you can add things to the exclusion list so that they are not included in the Time Machine backup. I hope that helps for that question. But this is a very important section here. Whatever is in this list, it is not being backed up in your Time Machine backup. All right, just share that.
Just another kind of a bit of a follow-up to this SeaBass. There's one from Ron here, and he has multiple drives with images on it. Can I replicate each individually with Time Machine?
Images, eh? Yeah. When you say an image, are you looking at?
I think he's potentially referring to
like pictures, or an image file.
Say it's image pictures.
Okay.
I think he's getting at, can Time Machine make a backup of that content? I think Time Machine, I just want to give the explanation that Time Machine more is a system, a computer system moment in time backup.
That's right.
Not a tool to be used to back up your existing hard drives.
We gotcha.
Copying them, for example.
Understood. Desmond brings up a great point there, and that's a great question. I do have, again, like you say, Time Machine was really kind of meant to be like a system backup. And it's going to constantly, while your drives are connected, constantly do those updates. Now, if you are, let's say, a photographer, maybe you're an Adobe Lightroom user, and you've got a big monster, 24 terabyte tank. Time Machine's not the appropriate tool for something like that. This was really meant to kind of take care of your Mac and things of that nature. For more advanced users who have like large data sets and the like, there are some other programs out there called like Carbon Copy Cloner or Super Duper that were really kind of meant to handle those types of large backups to another drive. So for example, at home, we've got a 24 terabyte drive that's got all my record collection, all of my my photo collections, which is like 9 terabytes. And that is being dealt with. If I need to make a backup of that, I'm using Carbon Copy Cloner to clone that entire 24 terabyte drive to another one. Additionally, I can just choose the file folders themselves. So like on my big hard drive, I've got a movies folder, music folder, and pictures folder. Now I don't have another 24 terabyte drive to just simply back that up to. So I individually use Carbon Copy Cloner to just copy my photos folder to another 4 terabyte drive. And then I park that somewhere safe and sound. I do the same thing with my movie folder and my music folder. Lord knows it took me 2 years to digitize all this stuff. I really don't want to have to do that again. So this is why I really take care with those files in particular to back them up. They're really precious to me, and it's I would really not want to lose them. But I do have backups, and Carbon Copy Cloner is a great tool for Mac and possibly Super Duper as well.
I have another, this is actually a pretty great question from Heather. She's wanting to know, how do you back up an old Time Machine backup drive that is getting to its 5-year lifespan?
This is where, again, if you have a Time Machine backup that is starting to age out a little bit, or you're getting concerned that this listing of that old record of backups is going to disappear because it's getting a little on the old side. This is where Carbon Copy can kind of come in. Let's say you've got a 1 terabyte drive that's starting to hit 5 years. You're starting to hear some clicking sounds, et cetera, et cetera. All right, we want to take that drive, and you could, we have a service here where we've got data migration and things of that nature, where we could clone that data to a new drive, and a newer and larger drive for that matter, so you can continue on using it. That would be the best way to do it. Or if you want to do that yourself, Carbon Copy Cloner is another great tool to do that as well. But again, if you're not comfortable, come on in the shop here. We got some services here to help you out with that.
Another quick and easy way would be just to stop using that drive, keep it as an archival record, and then continue on as a fresh backup on a brand new drive.
Absolutely.
That could potentially be a very straightforward way to do it.
It is,
well,
yep.
I got one more question. This was from Kyoko.
Kyoko.
My question is, should I have chosen Encrypt backups? I've been backing up for a while without encrypting. Now I want the Time Machine to encrypt my data. Can I check off Encrypt backups checkbox when selecting a disk?
You can. Now, this is actually a great topic, because encryption is basically password protecting this external drive. So let's say you're a laptop user. You want to do your basic backups onto a Time Machine as well. If you choose encrypting that drive, it means that the drive is going to be completely secured. However, it comes with a price. It's very, very secure, but you're going to have to be very disciplined with your passwords and make sure you have that correct. Because if you encrypt a drive with that password and you forget that password, you're not going to be able to get that back. But if you're a lawyer, a doctor, or anything else like that, this is a great way to keep your data secure. Like if it was lost, nobody can just pick it up and connect it to a computer and start working with it that way. So encryption is also very, very good at that point. Let's see. If you've already started doing a Time Machine backup, I don't know if you can encrypt that again. I'm just going to make that switch for 1 second here. We still have the desktop on. Is that right, Dustin?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm just opening up Time Machine one more time here. I got a feeling I don't think you can encrypt it after the fact. So for example, I'll select that disk. Yeah, so once you've used or started a backup, you cannot turn the encryption on after it has been used for Time Machine. If you wanted to use a new drive, now you could choose a new hard drive, and you can still use more than one disk for backups, but you would have to basically choose the drive, encrypt the backups, and then use this disk. Time Machine will then prepare the drive in its encrypted form for use with your machine. So yes, you could turn that on, but you have to do it at the beginning of the drive's use for Time Machine.
Oh, just got a nice flood of some great questions come in. First, we'll start off with Dennis. Dennis is asking, if a virus invades my iMac, will it also contaminate my Time Machine backup?
It could. Yeah, because again, remember, viruses, malware, and things of that nature are they are in your system, right? They're part of Safari or however they get in there. They will be in your backups as well. So let's say, and again, this is where that knowing where in time you got that virus, you can go. So for example, let's say in August, this is when I started noticing this malware starting to come up. And I've been backing up since then. If I know when I kind of got that bug, I can kind of restore my machine to a time prior to that, if that is known. But you are correct. If you do get malware and stuff like that, maybe you got it taken care of. But if you have to restore that machine again, you will definitely have that virus back in there as well. This is where, a clean one is a great service that we offer here at the shop. You can get that sorted out with. When you get that home, you now have a date where you've got a known good non-malware backup, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Always feel free to come into our shop to answer those questions.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of different options on how to tackle that problem and how to get you back sorted out on that. Just a couple of quick ones before we end off here. Jane is asking, can you discuss how to back up wirelessly and automatically? Apple once had a great tool called a time capsule, which they have now discontinued. Can you talk about some of the replacements out there? I know we had access to a couple of products, and we're going to be bringing in a couple of new things into the store to deal with this specific problem.
Absolutely. One of the great things about, so like Des was saying, Apple had a product that was both a router and a network attached hard drive. And it was really beneficial because one of the things with laptop users is they're probably one of the most, there are users that don't always connect their external drives to their systems all the time. So sometimes their backups can kind of get out of date. Because Apple doesn't make these wireless network attached storage anymore, we're moving to some new products called maybe one from Western Digital and a few other network attached storage devices that you can use to connect your to work in along with Time Machine. So for example, in Time Machine, when I use this feature, open Time Machine, when we have the select disk, any of these, we have this one down here called Other Airport Time Capsules. Now, this is when we're picking a network drive, whether it's from Seagate, Western Digital, or any of these types of systems, we're looking for a spec that has Time Machine support. And this can be just an external drive with an Ethernet connector that would connect to your existing TELUS or Shaw box, and it then presents itself as a Time Machine destination. Why we like this one is I don't have to remember to connect a drive to my system. The second I walk into my house, the Mac goes, "Hey, I'm at home now." It connects wirelessly, and then Time Machine goes, "Oh, hey, I haven't backed up, in the last couple of hours." So if Time Machine's running, and you walk into your house and you connect to the internet, it will then automatically back up to that external drive. They're pretty easy to set up for the most part, but stay tuned. We're likely going to have some new demos in here soon, so we'll be able to demonstrate that. But it is a very good product, and it's a great way to make sure that everybody in the household has got accurate and constant backups.
I think we've got time for one more question. Another great one here from Alistair. He's maxed out his iCloud storage, where he stores all of his photos and videos. Apple won't sell him any more data beyond 2 terabytes.
Ooh.
I want to now store all of my photos on an external hard drive. How do I download my iCloud photos to my external hard drive?
Give me a real whopper of a question. All right. that can be done. I'm actually in that mode as well. I've got more photos than Apple offers space for. So you have basically two options. You can download the entire 2 terabytes, and you can set Apple Photos to both use the cloud and download a copy. A very, very long process to download all of that content, but it can be done. For something like that, I'd highly recommend like a one-on-one session here at the shops or wherever Simply Computing is closest to you. But that's something that we want to look at and vet. It can be done. It's time consuming, but it is something that that can be done. There's also some other programs for that, but that would be best suited for a one-on-one session in the shop to be done. Let's see. So because for any more storage, you can pick up let's say you've maxed out, you need more than 2 terabytes. This is where some of those G-Tech drives where we sell at the shop would be a great can to hold those larger ones as well. iCloud Photos is a great way to kind of work with that. Where am I going with that? The iCloud Photos, the max on it, and you've paid for everything. You're going to have to start decisions about where you're going to store your digital stuff. But do not turn off your iCloud Photos. Come into the shop and we'll kind of put together a plan for something like that. But that's everything today, folks. I thank you for joining us.